The Leominster City Council meeting is funded in part by DeCarolis Insurance Agency at www.decarolisinsuranceagency.com and by Avidia Bank at www.avidiabank.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's 5:30. I'm going to call this public hearing to order. Good evening, everyone. My name is Peter Angelini, Chairman of the Legal Affairs Committee. I'm joined this evening by the second member of Legal Affairs, Mr. Robert Tossi, the Ward 1 Councilor, and the Ward 2 Councilor, Pauline Cormier. I will read into the record. This is petition 45-24, Montechusett Regional Planning Commission. Glenn Eaton, Executive Director, requests that the following petition to amend the Leominster zoning ordinance and zoning map to create an MBTA, multifamily overlay district, and requests that you place it on the City Council agenda, including with this letter, proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance and a map depicting the location of the proposed overlay district. As previously agreed, the City of Leominster will be responsible for the public notifications required for this zoning amendment. The MRPC began working with Leominster's Housing Committee in November of 2023 to design a district that would meet the requirements of Section 3A of Chapter 40A while protecting and promoting the city's sound development. After investigating multiple areas throughout Leominster and considering various configurations, the committee and the staff of the MRPC agreed that this proposal will meet the requirements of the law in a manner best suited to the unique conditions of the North Leominster neighborhood. This was first appeared on our agenda back on April 22nd, and we held a public hearing on June 10th. We will be holding another hearing on June 10th at 6 p.m. I notice we do have a quorum this evening, so I'm required to read the following per order of the Legal Affairs Committee Chairman. This notice of the City Council Committee of the Whole meeting is posted in the event that a quorum of the City Councilors is present at this standing committee meeting. If less than a quorum of the City Council is present, no committee of the whole meeting shall take place. If a quorum is present, any such meeting shall be restricted to the standing committee agenda items listed above. With that, it's my pleasure to turn this meeting over to Mr. Joseph Boyle of Montechusett Regional Planning Commission and his associate Karen.
Boss.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
And whenever you're ready to begin, Joseph.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, councilors, members of the public for coming tonight. I am here tonight to discuss the MBTA Communities Act and the proposal we have for Leominster to comply with the act. As you all know, there is a housing crisis in Leominster and there's a housing crisis in Massachusetts. Massachusetts has among the highest and fastest growing home prices and rents of any state in the nation. There was a study came out recently which concluded that the Worcester County metro area has the third most competitive rental market in the country. as of 2024. Looking at a combination of the availability of units, the availability of units per 100,000 population, as well as the rate of rent increases, we came in, Worcester County metro area came in third in the country. To put that in perspective, Greater Boston is 12th. So we have a serious housing shortage, serious multifamily rental housing shortage in north central Massachusetts. And it's resulting in rising financial pressures for low and middle income families. It's greatly enhancing the homelessness problem. It is, housing issues are now the primary driver of homelessness in the Commonwealth. And it is driving people out of Massachusetts and out of Leominster with serious implications for our future economic development. And the cause of this, it's driven by a supply shortage. These are the market conditions are such that demand greatly exceeds the supply because the supply has been crimped for so long. And when supply and demand are out of whack, you end up with spiking prices. So, in response to this, the state legislature passed the MBTA Communities Act as an amendment to the Economic Bond Bill in 2021. Now, this is an amendment to the Chapter 40, the Zoning Act. Chapter 40A, the Zoning Act, is the law that passed by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that gives local communities like Leominster the power to have zoning. So they amended that grant of zoning authority in this bill in order to address the housing shortage, particularly the shortage of rental housing, and address it in a way that is transit-oriented in order to protect communities from the fiscal impacts and the traffic impacts. Other states have also recognized that they have serious housing shortages, particularly rental and multifamily housing shortages, and their strategy to address that, California, Oregon, Washington, and also Vermont, they have eliminated single-family only zoning. Whatever used to be a single-family zone, you can now build up to 4 units. Commonwealth of Massachusetts selected what I think is a wiser direction. That auto-oriented suburban development where those single-family zones, they already have traffic problems. They already have fiscal problems with the development not paying for itself. Simply increasing the number of units in that same pattern of development is just going to make the traffic problem worse. So instead, Commonwealth of Massachusetts is promoting development around transit centers in order to maximize the transit usage for commuters and minimize the traffic impacts of this additional housing development. 177 of Massachusetts' 351 communities are covered by this law, and in total, they are mandated to zone for almost exactly 297,000 units. Leominster's requirement is approximately 1% of that total. I hope you all keep that in mind. 176 other communities are required to zone for about 295,000 units. Now, a lot of people look at this law and they think about the implications of it on their local community, as they should. I just hope that the message that I'm trying to convey here is that, yes, the changes that are made in Leominster and the units that are zoned for in Leominster, we have to think about how the effect that those will have on town. But I do hope you keep in mind the effect of 295,000 additional units being zoned for by these other communities, and what that can do to address the housing crisis can also have a positive impact on your town. And your rezoning that you're responsible for, in a sense, is your ante into that statewide game of addressing the housing shortage. So, what are the requirements? Communities covered by the MBTA Communities Act need to provide at least one district of reasonable size in which multifamily housing is permitted by right, rather than by special permit. Multifamily housing shall have no age restrictions and shall be suitable for families with children. Now, what's a district of reasonable size? The specifics vary by the community type. Leominster is an MBTA commuter rail community. and the district needs to have a minimum gross density of 15 units per acre, subject to any further limitations by wetlands and septic codes. Okay? What is 15 units per acre? People hear that number and it's not immediately something that they can picture in their head the way they can picture 10 feet. They think of an acre, and they try to picture what that is, then they try to picture 15 units. 15 units per acre, how well can you read this? Okay. These are different types of housing. These are freestanding single-family homes. And on the other end, we have mid-rise apartment buildings that one might find in the center of a larger city. There has been a lot of this built over the last 40 years. And there has been a lot of this built over the last 40 years. But everything in between that has, to a large extent in American development, really fallen off the table. The production of things like duplexes, small court communities, townhouses, triple-deckers, four-deckers, that's not really been built. Two families and the small multifamily, what we'd call an apartment house. That's what's called missing middle housing. That is generally commonly built at about 15 units per acre. So we're not talking about high-rise, we're not talking about mid-rise. Examples of 15 units per acre, a two-family home on just under 6,000 square feet. A lot of 100 feet by about 58 feet with a two-family home on it. Works out to 15 units per acre. So, here are some examples you might recognize that are near the North Leominster MBTA station. This Cleaners, there are 2 residential units on the second story. So this, and it's on a lot of between 5,000 and 6,000 square feet. This is an example of 15 units per acre. This condo complex, if there's a larger acre site, multi-acre site, so they build out like this is approximately 15 units per acre. The house on the far right, the White House, that also has an additional unit in it, so that's another two-family at 15 units per acre. So a couple other buildings in town that you might recognize. The LaPierre East Apartments, that works out to 147 units per acre. So we're talking about almost 10 times. The Waterway Apartments on Water Street, this is pretty typical of a mill redevelopment project, 33 units per acre. It's actually a little bit lower than you see in a lot of mill projects. So that would be about twice the 15. So, what are the specific requirements for Leominster under the law? I said it was a commuter rail community, and some of the requirements vary by community type. There is a minimum size for the district of 50 acres. 40% of the land needs to be located, at least 40% of the district needs to be located within a half-mile radius of the North Leominster station. Your unit number, which is based on a percentage of your existing housing units for commuter rail communities, it's 15%. Your unit number is 2,810. And affordable unit requirements shall not exceed 10%. We'll get to that in a minute. One point I want to make, Leominster is not responsible for production. This is a zoning exercise. Leominster is responsible for rezoning to have one of these districts. What gets built there is not one of Leominster's responsibilities under the Act. So, working with the Housing Committee, we started studying. We studied a number of sites around the city. We started out eliminating right away the single-family districts as not being desirable for the purpose, and we looked. You can see, yeah, where we zoomed in, This is Nashua Street where the MBTA station is located. So our first steps were obviously to look right in the vicinity of the station because 40% of it needs to be there. And we found the multi-use 1 district on Nashua Street where the train station is located. This is the lowest hanging fruit. This would be highly desirable. The other ones that are close by, looked at the other MU1 district. We looked at this Residence B district here, the small industrially zoned district across the tracks from it. Also, the commercial and business B district along Main Street itself. And then a little late in the process, we had the recommendation to take a look at the Whitney Field Mall commercial district. We're going to come back to that later. We also looked at a number of scattered sites around the city. For example, already existing sizable multifamily developments, like Liberty Place, different places around the city. We looked at those. And we also looked at down here, in the far south of the city. The thinking here was that Sterling was looking at MBTA, doing its MBTA zoning here. And we were thinking that there could be some benefits to having the 2 MBTA zones next to each other to provide a basis to support commercial development within the district. We're going to come back to that idea too. But after looking at these districts, getting feedback from the committee, running them through the compliance model to see what they would provide for us in helping us meet the requirements. Based on the Housing Committee's recommendations, we eliminated a lot of these. We decided not to go with any of the scattered sites. We decided to only focus on the immediate vicinity of the train station in order to, with a vision of creating a sort of transit village around the MBTA station. So, these are the 4 we chose. The MU1 district along Nashua Street, the MU1 district along Hamilton and Crawford Streets, the small industrial district around Marshall Street, and the Residence B district that backs up the commercial district on Main Street. So let's take a look at each of these individually. The Nashua Street MU1 district is a 72.9 acre site with a unit capacity based. Let me take a moment here to explain what I mean by unit capacity. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts provides planners with what's called the compliance model. It's a complicated spreadsheet where you enter in inputs, it analyzes your zoning for you, and produces results for how many units could be developed on that site based on the parameters you enter. The site parameters, including the size and the requirements of the MBTA law, but also other parameters in the local zoning to see how much they limit the development. So, the MU1 districts provide us with a grand total of 2,665 units at an average density between the 2 districts of 16.8 units per acre, which gets us within 145 of our total. That's just the 2 yellow MU1 districts. The RB district, the residential B district, it's a 27-acre site with a unit capacity of 428 units. Paired with the final 2 MU1 districts, the final unit capacity is met. And they also recommended including the industrial district. Why was the industrial district included? Basically because it wasn't taken out. Think of the process I described. We looked at all of the districts that were in the immediate vicinity and met all of the requirements and examined all of those. And then that included the RB and the commercial districts right along Main Street. So if I go back a little, you can see that it makes if you look at the whole thing. With these 2 included, it produced one entire contiguous district. There are requirements for the district being contiguous, which are boring and complicated, but they do, the important part for tonight is that they do constrain us a bit in terms of being able to break it up into multiple different pieces.
Are you saying that the industrial district is necessary to meet compliance?
I don't believe the industrial district is necessary to meet compliance. Based on our analysis of running it through the compliance model, we get the total unit number without including the industrial district. It's a little bit of an additional margin that it provides, but no, we get to the total at the with the two MU1s and the RB. Yeah, this is an important issue that we're going to that we'll need.
If you dropped the units per acre to the minimum 15, can you comply with those 3 parcels?
No. When we ran the compliance model with a maximum of 15, maximum density at 15, we were below the total. We'll get to this in a minute when I get into some of the highlights of the bylaw itself rather than the map. But the bylaw sets a maximum density in this overlay district at 20 units per acre. That is, thinking of the density of a development site, of the lot itself, 20 units per acre. The requirement of the law is 15 units in each district. Now, the district contains some land you can't build on, and so in order to get the districts to hit the minimum requirement of 15, we set it a little over 15 to get to that net so that it would comply. At 15, it would be a little under compliance, and we'd have to have a larger area.
Would the industrial zone do that? Adding the industrial?
I do not have the answer on that in my head. I'm leaning no. I'm thinking there was a reason that it was included. We can go back and look at that to see if we said, if we drop that maximum from 20, including all of the ones that are in there, can we meet it? And we can also look at, even without the industrial, how low that could go and still meet it. We wanted to leave, I wouldn't recommend designing the law to hit the number exactly on the nose in case we send it to the state, they find something that we didn't. We might want to leave a little bit of a margin. The RB district I was discussing, it meets, paired with the two ME1 districts, final capacity is met as the ordinance is currently. The industrial district, if we just had industrial and the two MU1s, it would fall just short of the 25 to meet compliance. With the RB included, compliance is met. Okay, the BB and the commercial zones along Main Street. We originally included these in the districts that we looked at, in the thinking of one big North Leominster overlay district. A vision of the North Leominster, the commercial core of North Leominster being the heart of the neighborhood, the heart of the transit district, promoting the housing, serving as a source to promote economic development along that district, looking at whereas now it is large, it is mostly almost entirely one-story buildings with commercial there, a vision of building there with still businesses there, ideally at a higher level of square footage of commercial space with residents above. The Housing Committee was certainly on board with that vision, but they had serious concerns about, I'm sure you're all familiar with the traffic issues that are up there, and the having developments where the residents, multifamily developments where the residents are, the driveways are going directly out onto Main Street could be a problem. So they wanted to, they were worried about housing directly on Main Street there and wanted at least to maintain the special permit authority for housing or mixed-use proposals on Main Street itself. So we took the commercial and the BB out of the district based on their recommendation. Now, the Whitney Field Mall. Once again, the Housing Committee as well as the MRPC thinks that the vision of redevelopment through the adding housing into the declining regional mall area, that's something that has worked in a lot of communities. They brought back their, I mean, Whitney Field isn't as dead as a lot of malls. They brought back their dead malls by turning them into mixed-use, walkable mixed-use mini neighborhoods with helping to meet their housing needs, but also boosting their commercial development. Both we and the Housing Committee were very much on board with that vision, but we don't think that the MBTA Communities Act is the right way to do it. There isn't really pedestrian access from this district to the MBTA station, and it's not, it's almost entirely outside of the half-mile radius. So as a planner at the MRPC, I'm very excited. I hope to someday be talking about the future of the Whitney Field Mall, but it will not, the future of the Whitney Field Mall will probably, we do not recommend that it includes the MBTA district.
Question, what's the maximum amount of units that could be built on Whitney Field Mall? I know there's 3,000, but...
based on the ordinance as written, it has a build-up potential of 3,068. That would be a full tear-down and rebuild with just housing at the maximum density scenario, and that wouldn't be desirable from either a developer's end or the town's end. But a redevelopment plan for the Whitney Field Mall area, I would guess that somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 units would be a reasonable ballpark to think could go in.
So that's a number we could use in our models.
We could use those numbers in the models if we needed to lose some other districts, and it could help meet the number requirements. I do need to stress, though, there's the 40% needs to be inside the half-mile radius. Only a small part of this is within the half-mile radius. So
60% can be outside.
Yes, 60% can be outside the half-mile radius. Question? I'm sorry, was there another question?
Yeah, what actually is a unit?
Oh, a residential unit. Well,
By unit, you don't actually mean like an apartment unit, because you said that the cleaners there was 2 apartments, and then there was the actual cleaning place underneath it, so that meant that ended up being 15 units or something?
No, that ended up being a density of 15 units per acre. I was dividing the 2 units by the lot size.
So a unit actually is like an apartment?
Yes, an apartment, a residential unit, not the storefront unit, but the residential units. Single-family only apartments in an apartment building. That's what they mean by unit. Yes.
I have a question. I don't really understand how everything has to be within a half a mile of the railroad station. Do they think all these people are going to take the train to Boston? I mean, why are you concentrating on a half mile from the railroad station? One conversation is about we need apartments and we need building, and the next conversation is about the railroad station and that little bitty area around the railroad station. I don't see the connection between the two. Just because someone lives near the railroad station doesn't mean they're going to work in Boston.
No, it doesn't mean that they're going to work in Boston. However, there's a much greater possibility These are part of these units being attractive to people who are already taking the commuter rail, as well as providing opportunity for people who would like to take the commuter rail and have a less car-heavy lifestyle.
Big parking lot.
A great big parking lot. Yes, we're going to have to talk about parking. There is a garage there now.
Excuse me, when you talk about units per acre, are you talking about two-family units like a duplex or a triple decker or a four? Are you?
Yes, I'm talking about all of those.
So could you go 5 stories high and still meet the density but with less physical ground?
Yes, actually, this is an issue. The more restrictive the zoning requirements we put on the multifamily zoning in terms of things like height and setback, the larger the zone needs to be. And the more dense that this housing is allowed to be built, the smaller the zone can be. And that's directly related to values and community character.
That's up to the city.
Yes.
We can determine that.
Yes, we are working for the city of Leominster. We are on a contract to advise and recommend and provide professional planning services to the city of Leominster, who will be making the decision about your MBTA zone.
Real quick, if I may. So when we talk about, you mentioned the Marla Whitney Field, right? And the number of total build-out would be raising the existing buildings.
Right. That 3,068 number that I provided.
Okay, well, aren't we facing basically the same scenario on Nashua Street with the industrial zone? I mean, who's going to tear down a $3 or $4 million industrial building that sits on 3 acres of land?
Yes.
Pay the demolition cost. I mean, it just doesn't seem to make economic sense. So, and we have a very limited amount of industrial here in the city as well. So, anyway, that's just.
Yes. Yeah. This point that we can rezone to a certain area, and it becomes lawful to build multifamily there. That doesn't mean it would necessarily be attractive to somebody to do. The classic example of that is many urban areas, many of the more urban communities in the city have rezoned areas that are already built out at a fairly high level of density with newer apartment buildings. Now it becomes legal to tear down the 5-story 20-unit apartment building and put up a 6-story 24-unit apartment building. That isn't really going to be in any developer's interest, but that meets the rezoning requirements of the MBTA Communities Act. I want to make this point very clearly. You are not required to rezone for 2,800 more units. You are required to rezone for 2,800 units. So if on a certain site there's a 100-unit building and you rezone it and it would never make economic sense to tear down that building and put up a slightly larger building, you've still met your requirements. In a sense, the units that already exist within this district count towards your responsibility. You don't have to rezone for more.
It's all part of the compliance model underlying.
Have you done any, or are you required to do any impact studies on what this is going to help happen to our school system, to our roads, to our fire department, our police department? Adding these number of units is just going to increase North Leominster's traffic problems and probably education facilities.
And those, I think, are our biggest concerns in Ward 1. It's a traffic issue,
yes.
It's an infrastructure issue.
Yes. And so why did the Commonwealth of Massachusetts make this housing policy an MBTA law that concentrates development near the stations?
Why is law, right, this isn't optional.
Right. Why are we recommending mostly land within a half mile of the station? A lot of that is because of this traffic impact consideration. Building this the vision of it as a transit village for people populated by a large number of people who take the commuter rail is a way to reduce traffic impacts compared to developing it where everybody would have to drive everywhere. A second way to reduce traffic impacts, though, remember, people don't just go to work, they go to other places too. And if they can do more, however many of their trips they can do on foot rather than having to drive and park, that's a benefit for the community in terms of lessening the traffic impact. So if we adopt this in a way that promotes transit-oriented development and promotes the development of a walkable district, that can help mitigate the traffic impact level of it. This question about the schools.
Right?
Oh, yes.
Just real quick, I'm sorry. So I live in North Leominster, and I'm in walking distance to the train station. And when I go out of my house to get to the end of the street, the traffic is so bad, you sit through 8 to 12 lights. I see nobody taking the train now. What makes you think that adding more traffic, people are going to start taking the train? I'm in traffic for a half hour just to go from fire station down to my house.
Yeah, what makes me think that more people would take it was that they're not having to drive through that traffic to get to the train
But these
station.
people are going to have cars too. So even if you get half the development that you put up to take the train, you're still adding half more development of cars. And if you can't get the traffic through now. Airport Road's backed up, they cut down my street to go to Airport Road. Traffic there is horrible.
Well, yes, this is true. There are a lot of other hands in these considerations, though. On the other hand, if it was developed, if this was placed somewhere else in the community, there would still be some percentage of your new residents who are taking the MBTA commuter rail to work. They would then all have to drive to the MBTA station. There aren't free lunches. There are benefits, but there are costs with it. You've identified one with this North Leominster Transit Village Focus Visit. That is one. Yes, ma'am.
I would like to expand on what this woman said. Leominster is not a walking city. You cannot walk from here to there. You have to be able to drive. So somebody living in that area is still going to have to drive to the supermarket, to the pharmacy. You can't get there walking. It's not a walking city. So especially if it's down the end, you're going to have to build them literally everything they need right there. I mean, and they can't walk from there to the train station. It's not feasible. So the correlation between the MBTA and housing makes 0 sense. Zero.
Well, one thing to keep in mind about that is, well, yes, Leominster's not much of a walking city. The downtown, but right now that's about it. North Leominster is not really a walking neighborhood, right? As it is now. This is a vision for changes. This is adopting an MBTA Communities Act is going to result in new development patterns. One of those could be to change the character of the North Leominster business district, that commercial and that EV district, to have larger and different larger amounts and different types of commercial businesses, ones that are taking advantage of the presence of this this nearby customer base to target them specifically. This is what we've seen. Look, you build a transit-oriented, pedestrian-oriented, walkable mixed-use district, and provide a whole bunch of housing units for sale or for rent. You know who's going to move into those units are largely people who want to live in a walkable, mixed-use, transit-oriented district with a less of a car-oriented lifestyle.
That's a bad distance to walk from there to Market Basket.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. If this much housing were going in within walking distance of this commercial district, We expect that that would have an effect on the commercial district, a positive effect on the commercial district. You'd see more commercial development, and you'd see businesses going in to cater to these people who don't want to have to get in the car and drive to Market Basket. So more retail, local stores, things like
Market
that.
Basket would then move into the neighborhood to service these people as it was to be on the other side of the highway. They would move into the neighborhood to service these people, as you're saying.
I think Market Basket moving into the neighborhood to open up a Market Basket would be unlikely. A giant grocery store like that depends upon having a town-wide or part of town-wide customer base. But other...
If they wouldn't walk from Whitney Field up to MBTA Transit, then what makes you think they're going to walk from that area down to Market Basket or to those other places?
Okay, once again...
That area to get into the people that are there.
Yeah,
All you're saying is speculation.
Okay, I'm going to finish answering his question first, and then I'm going to go on to your question. So no, it is not the expectation that there will be a Market Basket that moves onto a mixed, into the business district. But, yeah, which, but for example, smaller grocery stores. A smaller grocery store in which people could meet some of their shopping needs, make fewer trips per week to Market Basket. Like, in places like Boston, we can talk about a car-free lifestyle. In places like Leominster, transit-oriented development is about a car-light lifestyle. People are still going to have to do some of their stuff by car. But if they can do some of their stuff that isn't by car, then that's less trips per unit. Ma'am, you had brought up the question of people, why people not walking from Whitney Field. Yes.
When Whitney Field was being considered, you said there wasn't adequate walking. So
Whitney Field is on the other side of Route 2. So that's why it doesn't have an adequate pedestrian connection.
The thing is, they put in all brand new sidewalks all over the city. They have brand new sidewalks there. And so, to your point, if that's the reasoning for not using Whitney Field, then if you're using reasoning for walking to go down and to go shop and work, everybody has a car. The old days are gone when one family had a car. If you've got 4 people in the family that are drivers, they've got 4 cars. That's realistic.
Everybody in the suburban areas has multiple cars per unit. This is true.
Boston or Cambridge that take MBTA or that live within an area and walk everywhere. That's not real how we live out here.
Yes, that is not how people, that is not particularly common among people in north central Massachusetts who are living now in north central Massachusetts. There are a lot of people moving into this region, and we expect that there will be more people moving into the region from the greater Boston area, which are going to impose a lot of these impacts, a lot of these traffic impacts on your community. This is, in one sense, this is a way to manage that growth that we know is coming. One vision of how to handle it.
I just want to make everybody aware, I think the legislature, when they adopted this, they knew that they'd get a visceral reaction from residents and more than likely elected officials. So they have a stick component, you know, the old carrot and stick. So if this isn't adopted, any community that doesn't adopt this by December 31st in our case, will lose the ability to apply for and receive grant money, such as Mass Works, and other grants that the city has been successful in obtaining millions and millions of dollars for infrastructure projects. So, yeah, you know, it makes it very difficult. Yeah, so, but again, I keep coming to the same point. I mean, the folks are talking about a village district there, but there's already industrial development, there's houses there. I don't see, I mean, I know that area very well. I don't know where there's a piece of land right now that could accommodate 15 units on an acre. Everything's built on it. So in essence, what we're doing is creating an overlay district on top of existing development, which is likely not going to change.
But they're going to carry the big stick by the end of the year and then make a decision if you guys haven't made a decision yet or we haven't.
No, if the city fails to adopt this, but some type of this MBTA Community Act, then we will become ineligible for grant money.
It
So
goes
that's what
further.
it's really about.
It goes
I mean,
further.
We want to continue the grant money source.
It goes further. You should also know that the Attorney General of Massachusetts has taken to suing communities and trying to enjoin them to comply with the act.
Has that happened,
About-
Mark?
It's happened.
In several
There's
cases.
also, housing authorities will lose their money as well.
Well,
Yes.
so the housing authorities, you know, what you've said from the very beginning, going back to the start of your presentation, saying Worcester County and this area was the highest in the
Third highest.
state.
Third highest in the country.
And highest of states anywhere. California, I beg to differ, is higher, okay? You also mentioned that you went by 100,000 people as you were describing the city around Worcester County. Leominster is at 50. We're around 50,000.
43.
Agree?
43.
43, okay, thank you. So one of the things that you talked about was reducing traffic because people aren't going to use their cars, but they need to be able to park wherever they take the train, if they do. And you also mentioned that the development around the transit center, if it's low income that's going to be housed in these because there's such a shortage and a need, then I don't understand if they're going to, and have you done a study that these people, when you had it done in other areas, are actually low income taking the train to go to work?
Okay.
Because
That's, okay, this, we're going to get to this in a minute.
Okay.
We do not expect this to be a low-income district. We expect, were this to be built, that the units would be high-end luxury condominiums. In order to make the development economically feasible for developers, they'd have to hit relatively high ends. In addition, there is a cap put on how much of an affordability requirement is allowed in this district. We will get to this in a moment, but...
Mr. Boyle, if I may.
Yes.
Just to clarify, and we have the same concerns that you all have, and we know the traffic, we know the situation. But I think what it's important to understand is there's not some developer waiting, chomping at the bit to go in and put 2,000 units in on Nashua Street. This is, we're not there. This is a zoning issue. What the state is mandating is that we zone it so that a developer could come into the city and say, this is what I would like to do here. So don't think that there's some developer out there, because the reality of it is there is not enough room and there's not enough of anything. We're doing this just strictly out of zoning. There's not, this time next year, you're not going to have 2,000 new neighbors in your neighborhood. So your concerns are the same concerns that we have. Like I said, there's nobody here waiting to do this. This is a zoning issue, and that's why we're having this tonight, to address it.
Leominster's advantage, it's about the grants, because the grants are what we've always had. Good paved roads, sidewalks that aren't being used that have been put in, whatever they decide, whatever they write grants for. That's the truth. Because, as said earlier, if it's not agreed to, of course, they could sue us, but it's about getting grant money.
No, they are suing.
They will sue us. It's not could.
But I'm
They
talking
will.
about grants.
They have.
But we're gone way beyond traffic and all this other stuff, and higher apartment pricing and stuff like that. Because you still have to pay 10% to low income, no matter if anybody's building, that's a state law, right?
It is not.
It
It is not. I'm going to get to, no, it is, you do not have to. I'm going to get to the affordability question in a moment, and I think you'll be interested. It was a surprise, actually, when they passed the law. So, yes, sir.
Listen, obviously, most of these people have concerns relative to where it's located, right, in Ward 1. we know the law requires 60% to be within the half mile.
Yes.
So if we got creative and said, okay, we're gonna take the other 40%,
Is it 40?
It's 40, it's the other way around.
40
in the
and 60?
district.
So we took the other 60, sorry, thank you, Councilor Angelini, and we, in part, let's say, plunked it down on Central Street where we have Central Village South, which is a large, pretty dense housing project right now. And we created features. I know the last time we were here, we talked about having common areas and commercial areas on the first level as part of this overlay, which would help us ensure a more quality construction project. Could we tempt, and if, worst came to worst, if a developer took and tore down Central Village South, I know people live there, and it provides housing, but could we potentially include that, so not all this burden is on North Leominster?
It is an option. These types of conversations took place in the housing committee, and based on the trade-offs, they were they were recommending a train station-focused district to maximize the pedestrian, the people who had quality pedestrian access in order to address the traffic issue.
But we, as the people who voted on this, have to take into account constituents who we're hearing loud and clear from. And to make them suffer the entire burden of this, I'm not sure is entirely fair.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, yes, this is the sort of decision that the planners can't make.
and by the way, can I just confirm? I think you did the night we first met. We can require that the first level of these constructions, we have common areas or commercial areas or some mix of those two things?
We have looked closely into this. A community can meet up to 25% of its unit mandate. Not in a multifamily overlay zone, but in a mixed-use overlay zone, which requires commercial on the first floor. The drawbacks on that are your land area of that mixed-use overlay district doesn't count towards your land area requirement. You don't have to worry about that. Leominster is way over its land area requirement. The other drawback is you can only meet 25% of your unit total in that district. So you have to put the other 75% somewhere else. But you can, but
it's a tool.
Yes, it's not a question of, no, we cannot allow in the multifamily overlay district, we cannot require first floor commercial. It's rather, they've allowed this other type of district to meet some of the need.
Okay, thank you.
Here's a question.
Yes.
I keep hearing the word build. Build, but then on the slide that you showed, that showed the Hamilton Street area and then the two other areas on the other end, industrial areas included, you say that means the zoning or the area space. So my question is, because you guys keep saying build, and all I keep hearing is a developer and build, and I keep seeing there's trucks and more buildings and cars coming in, but then I seen a slide that said that there's an X amount of numbers of houses that are already there that fit the requirement. So are you talking about just the space and having it rezoned to meet the zoning in the space-wise area? Not saying that you guys are coming in, or a developer is going to come in and build anywhere, but this area covers the space that you need.
This area covers the space, and it allows the development of the number of units that Leominster has to allow.
If needed, more units to be built, because right,
If it's
what you're saying is there's nowhere for housing to be built right now in that area, so heaven forbid, she just said the developer's not waiting by the side to come in and build these houses now. So my question is it just to say that we have the space that meets the state's requirement, and we rezoned it to give you guys what you want, but there's no way in how somebody can come there and build all these spaces because you're knocking down a $3-4 million development already.
Yes.
For an industrial building, to build a possible $10 million apartment building down the road in 5 years.
Yes.
Nobody can say that
You're
that's not going
exactly
to happen,
right.
because for a lot of people, that means to a lot of businesses and corporations, That's nothing to come in and knock down a $5-10 million building to build a building that's going to reap them $100 million in the next 10, 20, 30 years during that person's life. So it's not unfathomable to think that that's what's going to happen. For somebody to come in and buy one of those industrial buildings, say, we'll give you $10 million to get the hell out of here, because we're going to build a building that's going to bring us half of that every year anyway, or the first 5 years, we're going to get half of that back. So that's not, I'm a numbers guy, so the numbers make sense, but enough space there and getting enough back in your development to put the apartment building there. I'll buy your $5-10 million building, put a development that's going to bring me $50 million in the next 5-10 years. Easy. The numbers make sense.
Yeah, there was a story some of you might have seen in one of the recent Boston Globes calling out some communities almost for cheating in their MBTA laws by passing MBTA laws that cover areas where it's very unlikely anything would ever get built. They rezoned an area that's full of 2-year-old, six-story apartment campus. It isn't in any developer's interest to come in and do a tear down and do a rebuild, but they've met their requirements. And this was written in as these communities are cheating. They're not actually going to be providing it. But I don't look at it that way. I think that this law is about making sure that all of the communities are pulling their weight and making their contributions. Now, if communities already are, if they've already got a whole bunch of multifamily already built there, good for them. You know, they have meeting their requirement. They're already meeting a bunch of their requirement, and they only need to meet the rest, and that's the way it should work. I don't think it's cheating. I think that communities that already allow for multifamily and already allow multifamily are going to be less impacted by this than communities that have been very deliberately exclusionary for all of this time. So yes, if we rezone already built areas to allow this multifamily, it produces the outcome that you're increasing traffic in already built up areas where there's traffic. If we rezone and and the multifamily district goes, like a lot of the smaller towns are doing, on an unbuilt greenfield site out somewhere away from everybody, well, that greatly increases the chance that every single unit that's possible to build, that's being zoned for, will be built, because you got a greenfield site, you don't have to do demo, and you can just build. So yeah, these are all trade-offs. A redevelopment model for an overlay district versus a new development model for an overlay district, they all come with pluses and minuses.
So when we started this process, we as an organization were against it. Out of our 22 communities, 17 are rural. Some have no water, no sewer. How are we going to possibly do this? So, you know, we pushed back to the state, and we were told, you have to do this. This is a mandate. You don't have to build it, just zone for it. You don't have to build it, just zone for it. So these overlay districts are put on top of your existing zoning so that the existing zoning still works. You can still have that existing zoning. The overlay district just comes on and gives another option. So you're not losing what you already have. It's just adding another layer.
Okay.
I see us losing what we already have. We live in a residence A, and this would allow somebody to come in and put in however big they want, apartment building, right in our residence A. We've been living in the same house in North Leominster for 60 years. It's a wonderful, wonderful, quiet place. There were a lot of families, a good place to raise your kids. Everybody knew everybody. Life was good. And somebody can come in and wipe out all the work that Leominster has done to have a lovely community where people get along. And to tell you the truth, I don't think you ever grocery shop, but you think you can go to the grocery store and walk home with your groceries. I'm sorry. But you have to have a
car.
Okay,
I think he was thinking of like a little bodega.
Yeah.
Like a,
So I don't know how many of you have lived in a city larger than Leominster, but let's just say that there are walkable places in this world where people live at, there's levels of density of commercial and residential development where they do a lot more on foot than people who live in single-family homes in suburban neighborhoods. North Leominster is never going to be like a Back Bay and a North End in Boston, but it can be. It can have more done on foot than people can do. It can be a district where people do more on foot than the people who are living in the Leominster RA district right now are able to do.
Well, I did. I lived in East Boston.
Oh, good.
And you would have to walk, but you could walk. The benefit, you could walk. But the reason you could walk is because you'd be sitting in traffic for 2.5 hours trying to get to the end of the street. So, I mean, so my thing goes back to the traffic thing. More people come, more traffic. And like this lady said, if you do walk to Market Basket and shop, good luck crossing that road that goes on Route 2. People don't stop there. Those give you a speed bump. I mean, it's pretty much the truth.
Mm-hmm. I want to get this point across. This talking about walkability. This is not entirely black and white. It's not just the island of Manhattan versus Sterling. There is in between. There are places where people walk less than people living in the Leominster RA districts, but it's not like living in Greenwich Village, where you're doing almost all of your actions on foot. This slide is about an overlay district. Basically, the way an overlay district works, we draw it over the existing zoning. It applies changes in a defined area which aren't desired in other areas in the same zoning. So, for example, we're proposing that this multifamily overlay district lay over some MU1 zones. There are other MU1 zones where we don't want to allow multifamily housing by right. So instead of changing the zoning code to allow multifamily housing by right in the MU1 zone, we draw this overlay district. And it only applies underneath the overlay district. Now, you do this, overlay districts are used when you want to apply a rule to a specific area which are not desired in other areas with the same zoning. Think of, a lot of communities here have water supply protection overlay districts. So they've got their zoning, and in this residential district you need 30,000 square feet, and in this commercial district you need 10,000 square feet. But they draw a shape that covers several zones, covers part of the residential zone and part of the commercial zone, and in that zone you need 2 acres for anything. Doesn't matter what the underlying zoning district is, that is they draw that overlay zone to apply that lot size to that area. It can be done to apply additional regulations where there's extra protection, or it can be done here to provide additional opportunities, additional rights to landowners they didn't have. So the underlying zoning remains in place. Okay, so the rules for what has to be there remains in place, except for whatever change is specified in the overlay district. In this case, allowing multifamily housing by right. So the important part of this, from a public policy perspective, is none of your industrial businesses that are having an overlay district imposed over them are losing any of their rights to operate their businesses, or expand their businesses, or otherwise. Their rights remain exactly what they were before.
But the residents listen to our property taxes and things like that. As you say, it allows for multifamily and things like that. So property taxes are in some sense for us. How does it change for us if they're allowing multifamily?
If you have a piece of property which is currently, you are allowed to have 1 residential unit on it, and it is upzoned so that you're now allowed to have multi-residential units on it, that value of that property is going to increase. And that will and the property taxes on it are likely to increase as well.
You said they are likely to increase, right?
Yes, property values and therefore taxes of upzoned land generally increases.
So even if I don't upgrade my property or make this multi-family, my property value is still gonna go up, which then in turn will make my property tax go up for the same piece of property that I already had before you rezoned it. It's exactly what you just said.
Yes, that is exactly what I just said.
What's the percentage in which it could increase?
What's that?
What's the percentage in which it could increase?
That would really be a lot of speculation. If you're talking about if you're talking about an unbuilt piece of land, okay, so where you don't have to worry about tear down, it's going to increase by a higher percentage than if you're talking about where there's an existing home and redeveloping it would become possible. If you've got a piece of land that's small enough that you're only allowed one now and you can only have one additional unit, it's going to increase less on a percentage basis than if somebody owns a large parcel and it can be redeveloped for many more units. So how much is it likely to go up? It would be a complicated math problem that would depend on the specific conditions of the site.
I mean, you're taxed on the assessed value of your property, not what it potentially could be.
That's a true question, but
Unless you have nothing's on the land and you can build several
I'm just talking about my
units,
existing structure.
that will go up.
You're saying the value of my existing structures is also therefore
Not the
my property
structure.
tax.
No, the building would be worth exactly the same. That wouldn't change. The value of the land might increase.
The property value goes up.
The value of the land, yes.
Yeah, I don't think any assessor has dealt with this yet, right? I don't know how they would assess
well,
that.
hypothetically, if the property tax does increase, what about people that are barely getting by now? Are they going to end up losing their home because they can't afford the taxes anymore? So isn't it like
Yeah, I don't.
you're putting houses up for people, and then people that when their taxes go up, that are barely getting by, they're going to lose their houses.
Well, in that kind of circumstance, they sell their
There's people that live on
houses.
fixed incomes.
In that circumstances, they would be selling their houses. If people, and this, I know that this happens in communities that see rapidly rising property values, rapidly rising housing costs. Especially older residents, sometimes the increase in property values makes it difficult for them to stay in their homes. In those circumstances, they'll often sell their homes and take all of the profit they've gained since buying them however many years ago when they weren't elderly people on fixed incomes. And in addition, whatever additional increase comes from upzoning this land. Another option, I want to say, if people in Leominster are really concerned that there are incumbent homeowners who are not able to stay in their homes, they've been there for a long time, property taxes are getting high, they're not able to afford them, something that a lot of communities have done that allows people to stay in their homes is accessory dwelling units. But that's not what we're here for tonight. We're here for the MBTA law. This issue of rising property values and people not being able to stay in their homes, this is a serious problem that's been going on for years.
Yes.
The adoption of zoning on top of residential zoned areas does have the potential to contribute to put a cherry on top of what's already been happening over the past, since about 2012, the spike in property values. It's already a serious problem. This could make it marginally worse if this is placed on top of RB districts.
Yes.
One thing to keep in mind: this is the only residence zone district included in here is RB, which already allows some apartment uses other than single family by special permit.
Okay, so one last, and I'll be quiet. So if they do sell their house because they can no longer afford their taxes, but all the properties are going up in value, they're not going to be able to afford to buy another house.
Well, downsizing is also a solution that people who face this problem. I mean, this problem's existed for a long time, and The elderly couple, they had kids, they bought a 3, 4, 5-bedroom house with their kids. Now their kids are out, their income is down. Downsizing is something that's very common. There are a lot of pressures, financial pressures on keeping up a house.
Yes, I understand, but I've seen a lot of that. I used to be a builder, so I've seen a lot of that in Lexington, Massachusetts. Builders would come in, development, build houses, property tax would go up. People next door couldn't afford it anymore. They end up losing their house. Their house gets taken over, and they're in a nursing home somewhere, and I just don't think it's right. That's just my only point.
Excuse me, perhaps Mr. Boyle can finish his
Well,
presentation.
yeah, let's-
There will be questions after. I'd like to just keep this moving along, but thank you all for your input.
I've gone over the map. So the ordinance, it proposes to create this multifamily overlay district. We are proposing a multifamily dwellings allowed by right up to 20 units per acre. Now, allowed by right. There would still be review of these projects. Leominster has a robust site plan approval ordinance. Triggers include adding 10 parking spaces, increasing an existing parking area by 25%, and this is the big one, changing the land use category of a lot. All trigger site plan review. So the construction of multifamily or apartment building on any property which isn't currently a multifamily apartment building would trigger site plan review. Now, site plan review differs from special permit review. In a special permit application, the planning board is allowed to say yes or no to the project. In a site plan review, the planning board is allowed to condition how the project is designed, how it sits on the property. Change where the building's located, where the driveway comes out, the landscape design, different kinds of things, the typical neighborhood impact protective conditions that are typically covered in the site plan review. So when this allows multifamily dwellings, it means by right, it means that multifamily dwellings up to 20 units per acre would go through site plan review rather than special permit requirements. Dimensional requirements encourage walkability. We discussed this. A 10% affordability requirement for projects over 10 units, 12 units. That's the maximum allowed by the state. This is not an affordable housing program. This is envisioned as a market rate housing program. The original law did not allow a requirement, an affordability requirement. It was lobbying by the communities that compelled them to require it because the state didn't want communities adopting very high affordability requirements as a poison pill just to make development impossible. But the communities, you're all under the subject to the 40B Act, where the towns are, cities and towns are supposed to have 10% of their housing stock be affordable housing. Leominster's right about at 8. And the concern from a lot of these towns was that if we do this rezoning and these projects are going to be built, that's going to set us back. We're going to fall behind. So they pushed and they got the state to allow a 10% affordability requirement.
Would that be raised to 20% though?
No, that's what I'm saying. Oh wait, there is a way to do it.
Yeah.
It hasn't been done. It's required to do a feasibility, an economic feasibility analysis to show that a 20% affordability requirement wouldn't actually be a poison pill, and developers would actually be able to do projects and make a reasonable profit while hitting that requirement. We've not done those. No one has requested.
Not in our region.
No one in the region has requested one. So it's not an affordable housing program. It is. This law was passed to address problems in the housing market. problems in the housing market that have been created by regulation. It envisions market rate housing. This is what I just said. You want to avoid losing ground. The other issue, the other reason that the Housing Committee was very much in favor of this, they were concerned about a future in which high-cost luxury condominiums built in Leominster and are being bought entirely by people selling their $1.5 million to $3 million homes in Greater Boston, and this wouldn't actually provide any kind of a housing benefit for Leominster. Their thinking was, including an affordability requirement, it won't just be extremely wealthy people from Greater Boston who are able to benefit from these projects. I had spoken about this before. The MBTA law requires us to meet certain numerical targets, but we are planners. You should plan for places, not numbers. So we were looking at this place around the MBTA station, looking at North Leominster, and thinking about what passing this law and the build-out likely to result from it would be, and what the impacts were going to be. And part of the thinking on our end and from the Housing Committee was that using this housing growth to boost the commercial sector along Main Street there would be a valuable economic development goal, help meet some of the city's economic development needs. A vibrant neighborhood with a retail sector boosted by pedestrians from nearby housing and commuters coming on and off the train. One thing we noticed when we were doing our investigation of this site is that there are almost no uses there currently that take advantage of the presence of a train station in any way. There are very few residential buildings within walking distance. There aren't really businesses that are catering to the commuters, either commuters from Leominster going out or people coming in. The only ones we saw are the North End Diner and the pizza place around the corner. Sometimes people get off the train and go there. We think there could be a lot more economic vibrancy produced coming out of this plan. One of the proposals in the ordinance that you've seen is a change in the parking requirements. We reduce your current zoning requires 2 per unit for any unit. For multifamily housing only within this district, we are proposing a switch to a number of bedrooms based standard. 1.5, I believe it's 1.5 per unit below 3 bedrooms, and then 2 per unit above 3 bedrooms. The reason for that, and the reason for limiting it to multifamily housing is, first of all, multifamily housing typically includes smaller units than large lot single-family homes. There's likely to be a lot more 1- and 2-bedroom houses among these units than there would be in a single-family subdivision. So that will reduce the number of cars per unit. The other thing is, with multifamily developments, you can take advantage of economies of scale in providing your parking. Everybody, all of us who live in single-family homes, need to have some extra space in our driveway for guests, deliveries, or whatever, if we want them to be able to park on the street. Each and every one of us needs to have a little bit of that extra space, and that extra space is usually not used. If you've got 16 units in one building instead of 16 single-family homes, some of those extra spaces can be shared spaces, and so you end up needing fewer parking spaces overall. That doesn't apply to other uses, so we're only proposing that for multifamily dwellings.
So we're not anticipating these folks having any company?
We are. We're not saying don't provide extra, but we're not anticipating all 16 units in this theoretical building to have all of their company come on the same day.
We generally find that when we have under parking in units, it ends up on the street, right? And then the winter time we have a parking ban, and it creates all kinds of havoc. So,
On this parking question, there is one other topic that the city council might want to take up, and that is arranging with the MBTA to allow the leasing of spaces in the station. You already have an ordinance in your zoning that allows off-street parking to be met somewhere else. If the station itself, which doesn't seem to be close to capacity, if the station itself can meet the parking needs of development that goes in, that's impervious surface that you don't have to pave near the Nashua River. That's not cars. That's keeping extra cars off the street. So this is part of the
Does the law require, does it have restrictions on parking requirements?
It does not.
Okay.
It does not. It does not, but excessive parking requirements that affect the development potential of the properties in the district can reduce the output from the compliance model and get you below your requirements. So we couldn't have parking requirements that actually make it impossible to build at 15 units per acre. You would have high parking requirements and a 2.5-story limit. You wouldn't be able to get to 15 units per acre even if you technically allow it, and the state would catch that. So I include...
So indirectly, there is a sort of restriction. It's got to work in the model.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You would really have to, I think you'd really have to try. Yeah, a community would have to, well, let's see if we can use this as a poison pill in order for this to really be a silent problem. I think. We haven't really tested this one because no communities have really come up with sure, you can build multifamily housing, but you need 5 parking spaces per unit. Nobody's tried that yet.
Okay.
All right, I put the dimensional table in here, but by right multifamily, I wanted to point out we are...
So these are the parameters that we put in the compliance model.
These numbers that we're getting in these districts, these are based on a maximum height of 4 stories. That was a level, that was the height that the housing committee seemed comfortable with. Maybe you want to check their work, but let's keep in mind, if you can go higher with the buildings, you can have a smaller district. If you were to go lower with the buildings, you need to have more land area for the district.
So if we comply with their regulations here, we don't have to comply with their stormwater regulations? Say maximum impervious coverage, there's no amount that would be required?
Not under this rule, but your zoning doesn't
Talk about the state mandates.
yeah, your zoning doesn't void the state mandates. So if even if your zoning allows construction that isn't consistent with state mandates, those state mandates could still apply, and that could reduce the development potential of the lots. And as a matter of fact, in the law itself, is it the law or the regs?
The compliance.
Yeah.
The compliance guidelines.
Yeah, in the guidelines themselves, they say that you have to allow this density of 15 units, subject to the state, like stormwater and sewer.
Notwithstanding the Wetlands Protection Act, any
I'm talking
flood
about
zones,
the stormwater, because right there you
stormwater.
say that
Yes.
there's no maximum for the impervious coverage. You could cover this entire thing and be exempt from the state mandate.
It does not
No.
exempt you from the state mandate.
It
So
says right
saying
there that there's no maximum.
There's no maximum required
in
under
the
this
zoning,
act.
there's no maximum in Leominster's zoning. Leominster's zoning will not impose a maximum. This other, the state stormwater regulations very well put, and those state stormwater regulations imposing that maximum and potentially reducing the development potential of the site is not relevant to us. We would still be compliant if the zoning sets it at 15 units per acre, even if they can't achieve that even if they can't realistically achieve that because of the stormwater regs.
I know, it sounds janky, right?
It's just more
It's-
state mandates.
Yeah, like, we have to do this, and you have to comply with wetlands, floodplains, all of that other stuff.
So yes, I was talking about towns that, I was talking before, that article in the Globe, about communities that chose the location of their district in order to minimize the number of new units that would be built by putting it where there were existing.
Good segue, Mr. Boyle. Sorry to interrupt you, but Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Based on his point, Mr. Boyle's point, if this is your committee, your hearing, but I would be fascinated if we cut down the amount of acreage that is down to the minimum, the 40% that's within a half a mile of the MBTA station, for example, and we started looking at disparate or a scattered approach. And I thought of places like, no particular order, Central Village South on Central Street in Leominster, Mahogany Run, which is on Lawrence Ave, Lawrence Street, Foxwood condominiums in Ward 1, Riverside Village in Ward 5, and also to continue that first floor commercial and common area space, 25%, be weighted toward the section that's going to be within a half mile of the MBTA station, making it a better, sort of more quality, higher quality sort of development within a half mile radius of the MBTA station, and see what that looks like in terms of trying to lessen the impact to that immediate area, as well as meet our criteria. In some ways, almost, I mean, some of these areas, there's nothing particularly wrong with any of these places, but some of them aren't sort of the cream of the crop housing in the community. And if in fact it was to be replaced, it might not be the worst thing in the world. Does that make any sense, Mr. Chairman?
It certainly does. Is that something that you could plot out for us?
It is something we can plot out. I am going to have to rain on your parade a little bit. I didn't come prepared with all the numbers in front of me, but there are requirements for the district being contiguous. You're allowed to have a couple of different districts, but for example, at least one of them needs to be 50%. I believe you need at least 50% of your zone needs to be in one contiguous district. And no zone can be less than 5 acres, I think.
5. And
there are some other requirements, and so that the bottom line is that will limit our capacity to scatter the sites. It will not eliminate the capacity to scatter the sites.
It will, based on what I just gave you, it's not an exclusive list, and it's just my idea for the moment. I think, with the exception of the 50% rule, which might bump up what you have to do in that MU1 zone, and I don't know how much of that would be, how much of that MU1 zone or zones you need to get to the 50%. I think all of these sites are at least 5 acres.
Okay.
All these other sites.
Okay. Process.
yeah, I feel like, the housing committee. See, the thing with the compliance model is we can't just set up the districts and then cut these parcels in. Our GIS analyst has to do it, so it has to come from there and then in, and the model makes it almost impossible to mix and match without doing a whole new compliance model for each.
I understand.
Oh, we can do it, absolutely.
Yeah, I understand it's a lot of work.
I'm saying that.
You got a lot of work to get 6 votes on this council.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I'll just speak for myself. I detest this law. Okay, I absolutely detest the fact that Boston's going to tell us how to zone our community. I'm sorry, I just don't agree with it. I've been practicing land use law for a long time. that was my entire career. And I just see this as a total encroachment on the local community. We know what's best for Leominster, okay? And to suggest, I mean, you know, government always thinks that it has the idea. And then they don't know the unintended consequences of what they do. I mean, what if this resulted in another school? I mean, that grant money, honestly, and I looked at some of the numbers involved here, if this had resulted in another school, they could keep that grant money times 20 years. It won't make up the cost of another school. And I started to think in those terms, in terms of the actual dollars and cents here. And honestly, you know, I did talk to a couple of developers about, you know, how we could sort of, you're right, the fact that we permit it or allow it doesn't mean it's going to get built. And I started thinking in those terms. And I want to comply with the law, but if you're going to get my vote, we're going to do it in a very careful, intelligent way that will impact this community the least amount possible. And I also do understand, and have even thought about, you know, sort of developing a union with other communities that have the same problem I have with respect to this law. I know the list is growing of communities that are saying no. And before we go down that road, I want to take a hard look. And I think there might be a path where we can maybe make this at least palatable. And I understand all these people's concerns, believe me. I lived here almost my whole life. I know what it's like. I mean, when the mayor ran for his first term, he said if he was mayor, you'd be home by now. Okay? That was 30 years ago. The problem still exists in North Leominster, if not, it's worse. That's no aspersion to the mayor. It's just a fact of life that, you know, the way this community was developed and that not having that link off of 190 into into New Hampshire, we get all this traffic dumps off of 190 and the state never, again, you know, never planned for it. There was never a way to get that traffic away from North Leominster. And to this day, 30-something years later, there still isn't a way. So those are my concerns. If there's a way, I don't want to, hate to make you do all this extra work, but to me, that's, listening to your presentation, this seems like potentially a win, where if we can sort of take some of this away from North Leominster and potentially put it in places where, I don't know if some developer's going to come along and want to buy all the condos in Central Village South, just like your example of that other community. And if they do, maybe it ain't the worst thing in the world. But this might be a way for us to sort of make this work.
Yeah. Those are, we're working for, all right, a couple of points I want to make here. First of all, we're working for the City of Leominster to help you meet your requirements under the MBTA law so that you don't suffer consequences from it.
Right.
If Leominster doesn't pass an MBTA law, it will not harm the MRPC, Karen, or myself in any way. Your community is facing these circumstances, and you have to decide what you want to do about that. And I didn't come here tonight to twist the City Council's arms to tell you you'd better pass this.
No, I believe me, I appreciate the work that you've done. You know, you've answered a lot of important questions, and you've given us some food for thought. But just sitting here listening tonight, I don't know, I'm not sure, you know, I'm sure the Housing Committee worked hard and long on this too, but I'm not so sure that sort of sticking all this burden on North Leominster makes a lot of sense. Based on the possibility, at least, of sort of spreading and shifting some of this, as well as, you know, as you said, I mean, is someone going to tear down Riverside Village and build multifamily? That's a pretty dense area already. Same goes for Foxwood, same goes for Mahogany. Those are all pretty dense areas. Fox Meadow, rather, sorry.
Yeah, we had Fox Meadow in there. Can't use that very well. Heritage
Those are
Garden,
condos.
Riverside Village, Liberty.
Now, even Heritage Garden.
Yeah, there are places, there are communities throughout Massachusetts which have taken that approach. And like I was saying earlier, I think it's a perfectly legitimate approach. That wasn't what that wasn't the feedback we were getting from the housing committee.
How much time do we have? How much time do we have to make this decision?
You will be out of compliance if you don't pass an MBTA law by December 31st. We came in tonight with this this petition, which has been submitted to the City Council based on the feedback we got so far, which focuses your MBTA district on North Leominster. And as a result of that, we have a large number of people who've come here from North Leominster who say, put it somewhere else. I think it's very possible that if we put it somewhere else, the next time you have a public hearing, you're going to have fewer people from North Leominster coming in and more people from somewhere else coming in with the same message. Put it somewhere else.
But it's equity, and it addresses a problem. I mean, you spread the pain, so to speak, right? But it also is a particular problem. When they passed this law, they didn't think, oh, the MBTA station in Leominster is in one of the worst traffic places it could possibly, I mean, that MBTA station is like in a bad spot, right? The train's been there since 1845, okay? Did they understand that when they built the train in 1845? No, they didn't. But the point is that this is just a bad collection of circumstances. It is. And it's not going to be good if for some reason or other, you know, all of us looking at this are a little wrong, and they build a lot more housing there than we ever envisioned. I mean, maybe they won't build 2,800 units, maybe they won't build 2,000 units, but if they build 1,500 units there, we got problems. There's no doubt about it. We got problems.
Yeah.
And that's not on my watch.
So, so you brought up the issue of wanting to spread it around to different parts of the city, and you have brought up the existing multifamily developments that already exist.
Yeah.
We looked at a number of those. We had also looked at south end of town on Route 12.
There's sewer down there.
Where there's sewer. Is that, should we go back and take another look at that?
Well, the problem there is that, quite honestly, it's raw land, so it's more attractive. Right? So
Yep.
that's why I didn't mention it, frankly.
Well, why not the mall at Whitney Field? Why can't we put the majority of the housing there?
That's an option. That's an
I mean, it already has infrastructure there.
See,
Yeah, why you walkway, you guys want people walking, why not build some kind of transit or walkway bridge that goes over the highway there or whatever? I mean, if you guys want something that connects the neighborhood.
they're usually not worth the money.
But it's not worth the money to you guys, but it's
Is it worth the money to you to build it would probably be several $1 million project to go over Route 2 for pedestrians. It would be a several $1 million project to put a pedestrian crossing over Route 2. If that's what the city of Leominster
What's the cost
decides
to every other,
is a
all of these
valuable.
homeowners who live in that neighborhood, to their property tax to go up over the next 10, 20 years, their property values to go up, people to be homeless, like this guy saying, you're just telling them to sell their houses and downsize and get out of the way. That's what your explanation was in response to it was. Oh, well, downsize, sell your house and get out of the way, basically, for somebody else to move in, is what you said.
That's an issue if it's placed somewhere else as well. If this is placed anywhere that's a developed area, that potential of displacement does come up.
But it automatically happens when I move in and these people have been living next door for 20, 30 years. I move in and buy somebody's property, knock down the house that's there, build some 5, 6 family monstrosity, or 15 apartment building property there, their property tax automatically goes up. Like he says, now the person next to me, and this lady who lives down the street, all their property values go up just by me building one building. Now all of these people who are living on fixed incomes, you're telling them all to sell their houses and downsize. Because one person moved in and changed the property value.
No,
property
you're not
values
telling me
go
that.
down.
It will, because you just said that it's overlaid under what's already there. It's single family now, it's overlaid with a multi, so if I move in and drop my single or double family home and make it a 6, 12 family apartment building, all the values go up automatic around it, don't they?
No, building the building would not
Go
make
down.
the values go up. building, I want to make sure people understand this. Somebody building a multifamily building next to you, that doesn't increase the value of your property. It's your property being rezoned so that you have potential for further development that would increase the value of the property. But no, having large multifamily next to you does not increase property value.
If somebody built a 12-apartment building next to my house, my single-family house, the value would go down.
Exactly.
See,
Nobody would want to live next
right, it wouldn't, right.
Right.
That would tend to make the value of your property go down. Having your own property rezoned so that it could be redeveloped would make the value go up. So there'd be one feature, there'd be one force tending to lower the cost and one force tending to increase the cost.
That would make me want to move to Sterling.
That's your right.
When you sell your
People
house,
build
like
buildings
say
all
you're
the
in a
time.
neighborhood, somebody sells their house, and then they do an assessment later on. We usually go by what the house is valued in the neighborhood. So if somebody's, say you're in a neighborhood and people sell their houses for $50,000 less than they're worth. I mean, it just drops down. Your house values, they go by the area of the neighborhood for taxes, correct? So if I build a house...
They call them comps, comparable.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, if somebody builds a multifamily apartment building near single-family houses, those aren't comps. It's a condo in a multifamily building versus a single-family home with its own lot. And so, as they're doing as the assessor is doing their assessment, they wouldn't be using that as a comp. So it's a little more complicated than what you just described, which is everybody at single-family homes.
Mr. Boyle, just a second, kind of taking off what Mark was talking about is using existing properties. And you said there was a limit as far as what we could put in a small area because it's not within the half mile.
Right.
Okay. So if that was part of Mark's plan, it puts some of that pressure off of having to have a dense area on National Street.
Yes.
Okay? And if Fox Meadow, Fox Run falls in there, I think you're going to see a large part of that problem go away.
I think some of those properties I suggested, my thought process are the ones to go with. The mall is a more complex issue.
Yes.
And we're going to have to address that as a community sooner or later. And that obviously is going to involve multi-use zoning. And to the extent that any housing is proposed there, which I'm going to take a long jaundiced eye toward, personally, I'd want to see that from a taxpayer's point of view as senior housing, to get away from what comes with the type of housing that we'd be talking about. No offense to the councilor at large and the Ward 1 councilor, to throw units in there that's going to put pressure on the school system and all the other services that go along with regular multifamily housing may not be the right approach.
But
I don't want to say outright that, but it's like Mr. Boyle said, it's not cheating, it's just sort of playing within the rules.
Another point I'd like to make about the Whitney Field Mall is that the city's going to want to redevelop that as a commercial, as a mixed commercial residential. Looking at it all together, the city is going to want to maintain a certain level of control. This is multifamily housing by right in the MBTA line.
That's a complex issue. There's lots of different uses. It could even be light industrial uses in that someday. Right now we have a taxpayer there, thankfully still, but I don't think we're going to mix those two together. We're asking for trouble.
Mr. Boyle, you still have some left of your presentation?
No, we had basically finished the presentation. My next slide, ironically enough, was, are there any questions? So we had gone back to the map to talk about...
Sorry, Mr. Boyle, this gentleman's had his hand up for a few minutes. Can we...
Question. we have to allow for so many multi-unit housing. So if our zoning for some of the Residence B or Residence C was relaxed to allow it by right, say with an accessory dwelling unit, would that take up a certain requirement? Like if you
I was
change-
with you until you mentioned the accessory dwelling
Well,
units.
so like the in-law apartments, if you allowed that by right in a larger area or in another zone, does that take up some of the requirements of meeting?
Simply allowing ADUs wouldn't. You have to allow
Well, that would
multifamily
be
housing by right. Have a density.
So
of
if you
these-
had a 40% within the half mile of the train station, could your other 60% be achieved by just changing the existing zoning to allow the accessory dwelling?
Not just by allowing accessory units, you have to allow the use, multifamily housing by right.
What a can
An accessory dwelling unit is one type of multifamily housing, but you have
If
to
you had
allow
it- if
the
you
other
allowed
types.
that in the 40% that you required within it. Say, it's like, is there any way of giving them what they need within a half mile and then changing the zoning or something like
Yeah,
that?
accessory units are usually associated in single-family zone. That's a whole can of worms, another can of worms.
The answer to the first part of your question is yes. Some communities have met their MBTA requirements just by taking one of their existing zoning districts and making minor changes to the regulations in there. I think that's how Fitchburg got it. It was a relatively small change. But the answer to the second half of your question, can you meet part of your requirement just by allowing ADUs? I'm afraid not. You have to allow the use multifamily.
If it's a housing
apartment.
unit though, an ADU is a unit,
Yeah,
but it wouldn't, unless the lots were really small, 15 units per acre or 2 units per 4,000 square feet, whatever the math works out to.
but the requirement isn't to allow accessory dwelling units. The requirement is to allow multifamily housing at a density of 15 units per acre. That land use needs to be allowed somewhere.
How many more units need to be put in that area to make that district that you guys are proposing compliant for this zoning, to fit the state's guidelines for the city to get this grant?
Well, to take your question very strictly, not a single unit has to be put in there. Nothing has to be built for Leominster to meet its requirements. You just have to change the zoning. And if all of the developers in the world decide they hate Leominster, and even though they're allowed to build multifamily, they never build a residential unit in this overlay district, you've done your part.
Just by allowing it to be zoned for this.
To allow the use, yes.
And it doesn't guarantee us the grants, it just means they won't take them away.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't mean they can get
Right.
that, so they just want to
Right.
any addition.
When you talk to town of Holden, they reject the town. They don't want the MBTA telling them what to do. There's the same thing would happen here. We would have no say once we come to food, to bring the water to the
Right.
Yeah, the town of Milton, the reason they're doing it with Milton and not Warren is because Milton is, their due date already arrived. The due dates, so to speak, differ by the type of community, and they are called a rapid transit community, the same as the ones that are on the subway, and so they were already supposed to have passed their law.
He said Holden.
Yeah, whereas Holden, they're a neighboring small town, and they don't have to pass their law until this year, then the next year.
25.
25. A neighboring small town like that, their due date isn't until 25. And so the Attorney General can't sue you for violating the law until you violated the law. Milton has violated the law. Holden has announced their intention to violate the law, but they won't actually be in violation until the end of next year. The Milton case is scheduled to go to trial for October. After the last couple of years, I have given up making predictions of what judges are going to do. But based on that timing, the cities that have their due date by the end of this year can't wait to see how that turns out and then act. You have to at least have something ready to go and act on in case.
You gotta be ready.
Yeah,
Gotta be ready.
Got to be ready to pass this. Because we can't start waiting until until
Holden
the
got
case goes the wrong way.
sued, Holden got sued civilly
Yes.
by private parties, housing advocates in the Worcester Superior Court, and they won that case. The judge there ruled that the private parties didn't have standing to enforce the law. But that doesn't have anything to do with the Attorney General bringing this suit on behalf of the Commonwealth.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd like to know who voted this, it was enacted first, who voted this act into a law?
The state legislature, the House of Representatives and the Senate, and then it was signed by the governor. This is state law.
3 lines.
Yeah, question, please. So you went over the number of units. How much are you talking, do you think more population for the city was? The reason I'm bringing that up, like, so right now, like, population in Leominster, I believe they say was
43,000.
Okay, so you add population of other people, are we gonna build more shopping centers? Because I don't know if you've been to Market Basket on a Sunday, but you're in there forever.
Well, that's what Joe's talking about.
I
If
hope
you build
so.
the housing, there'll be a body that can support a commercial business. You know what I mean?
I think
It's an egg and a chicken thing.
I think it would increase, yeah, I think it would increase commercial development in this city. The vision that, based on what we were working with the Housing Committee, was talking about Main Street and commercial on Main Street there. We think it will be you'll see commercial growth right there in the vicinity of the overlay district.
Where on Main Street?
Through the redevelopment of the commercial properties already there.
Good. You mean, do we get to the other one? So once these people are allowed in, who has control after the MBTA gets the rezoning they want? Can they come in and just build what they want there, or buy up the property to build what they want there?
Well, it'll be land that's zoned to allow certain things, and property owners and or developers can come in and, I mean, it's just like all of your other zoning. They can apply for permits if permits are required. They can apply for building permits if there aren't special permits required.
I think it's hard for the people of Ward 1 to this is sort of a big deal, I think, for us in Ward 1. I mean, we're sort of a private end of town. We have a certain culture, I think, and this is it's a big deal for us, I think, to understand and to accept that we have to do something like this.
It's tough anytime Boston tells us what to do.
Yes, and they do that very frequently.
All right, I think it's almost time to reclaim the legal affairs meeting. All right,
So, in terms of process, this was, this language and maps as drawn up are the petition that was submitted now to the city council. The city council sent it to your subcommittee. Now your subcommittee has some thoughts. How does the city council process work?
Well, as committee chair, I go to other members, but I'm usually asked to make a recommendation before I go. So my recommendation at this point is going to have to be for further time. We have a continuation, we have a public hearing on June 10th at 6 p.m. I'm
Your
certainly.
body or the planning board?
Pardon me?
Your body or the planning board?
The city council was
Okay.
by. So, I mean, I don't feel comfortable right now certainly recommending any of these parcels or combinations thereof to my committee, that we would go back to the whole city council on the 10th of June and tell them, we got a great recommendation. We think you should include these 3 or 4 parcels and vote to approve it or to adopt the zoning. I'm not anywhere near there yet.
Right.
I think perhaps that, I think maybe you folks were guided a little bit by the housing committee more than sort of we were aware of. Trying to be as diplomatic as I can be, but I think some of what we heard tonight was the first time we've heard it. So I think you know, we're gonna need some time to chew on this. And,
Okay.
so, I do have the ability to schedule another subcommittee meeting at some point, which will probably, it will come after the June 10th meeting. And I know that puts us into the heat of summer and gives us, you know, a few months to wrap this up if we so decide to. You know, I
We
think.
work in all months.
Yeah. I'll be working too, so. So at this point, Council, let me go to the other members of Legal Affairs, if I may.
Mr. Chair, it would be my suggestion, and I think at this juncture, we had some questions and perhaps some suggestions by Councilor Bedanza of spreading this out a little bit, to spread out instead of just North Leominster, to see if those other areas are feasible. So it would be my request that we can follow through perhaps on Councilor Bedanza's suggestion. I would ask, and I'd ask the chair, that we put that back on the table for our consideration. Basically, and we've heard from the people of North Leominster here, if they're going to have to face the burden, why can we not distribute it out throughout the city? So I think that's an option that we would like to see looked into a little bit more, and maybe to give us some different options so that the burden will shift to more of the city rather than just in that one particular area. So,
Mr. Chairman, we've been previously working back and forth with the Housing Committee, and now the vision is that we will be working back and forth with the Legal Affairs Subcommittee of the City Council.
yes, that's what we were asking for.
Just for specifics, say, for example, Mahogany Run, that's, looking at the GIS map, it's clearly, to me, looks like it's at least 5 acres. It's 52 units of housing currently. So if that was part of it, that 5-acre parcel would support some of this. For example, who's going to buy 52 units and tear them down, or tear some of them down to build, you know, potentially 15 per acre, which, you know, it doesn't make economic sense, which is the way, like you said, it's not cheating, but it's a recognition that we're meeting some of this requirement already, which is the idea that I'm trying to get across to the Ward 1 residents, is that if we do this, you know, some of it has to be close to the train station. There's no way around it. But if we can do it a different way than the Housing Committee suggests, and start using some of this existing development to meet our quota, that's less units that gets built, which means less traffic, less impact, all the way around.
So, Mr. Chair, should we withdraw our petition?
Well, I wasn't aware that the petition was submitted until I mentioned it tonight.
Then how did it end up here?
Yes.
I thought it was sent here from the full council.
Oh, I thought you meant that somebody sent a letter in or something to them?
Oh, no.
No, that letter was my cover letter thing.
Oh, okay. All right.
That here we were reading from.
Procedurally, I think we'd want to, we'll just further time the petition at the next council meeting.
So we would.
And if we go this other route, we're probably going to end up scrapping that petition because it'll be too wildly different than.
I suspect so.
That's why I thought we should just
withdraw now so we can get the clock started again as soon as we can.
If you withdraw, we can't talk about it.
Right.
Oh, shoot.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So I think the action would be on the 28th, which is our next meeting, would be further time, but if we could get something going, maybe you could work directly with the chair of Legal Affairs to get some other model analyzed.
Okay.
Which might win some approval downstairs.
Now, we're talking about taking districts out of the area near the train station. Now, what we were recommending near the train station are the Nashua Street MU1,
right,
the Hamilton Street MU1, this RB, and this industrial. based on the conversations with the Housing Committee and also based on our own professional analysis of it, we feel like this MU1 is the low-hanging fruit. This should very obviously be included. The one that has the train station in it needs to be the core of the district.
I agree, and also I think Mahogany, for example, as one, is contiguous to it, which actually helps.
Down here?
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like I've heard very clearly, you want the residents out. Okay? That would probably moot the question of whether to include the industrial because of the contiguity issues. So, so basically so that leaves the question of this MU1 up top. Are you at the point of telling us take that one out the way you're telling us to take out the RB?
I would say probably, but let's see what we can do
for now.
For now, take it out and see what we can do with these other disparate sites. And then if we can't get there, we either find, we have a limit, right? I think I heard it was 5. We have no limit. Yeah, but how many can you put together? Is there a limit on that too, right?
You can have as many sub-districts as you...
There isn't a rule that says you can only have a maximum of 4 sub-districts, but other rules are going to, in practice, make it impossible to have it above a certain level.
All right, so we could always revisit that if we needed, if these other places didn't get us there. Right?
Yeah.
But for now, my personal opinion, speaking for myself, would be take it out for now.
I assume that bottom MU1 will still have us at that 40% that we need to be at.
I don't know.
It looks like it.
That's kind of what I was.
It probably would with Mahogany.
Right.
Mahogany, I think it would.
Is Mahogany in?
No, that's 50. Oh, you're talking about within the district?
Yeah, the 40% being within that half mile.
This line is the half mile.
Oh, so Mahogany will be outside.
So Mahogany's down here?
Yeah.
So that would be outside.
So we have to go look at that area 1, within a half mile, see if that meets the 40%.
Right.
Yes.
That's it, that's the criteria.
And if not, we'll have to see if this MU1 plus this MU1 meets it.
Okay. You got some work to do.
Yeah, but it's all work we can do.
Okay.
Every community has its own thing.
Yes.
Let me ask you this, right? The effect to that MU1 Hamilton and Crawford Street area, right? What would the main effect to that area be? Whereas it's already built, it's already full capacity. Like you're saying, just adding it, is it just space and rezoning? Or is it, like I said, is there going to be that huge property, like residential punch to the neighborhood where the property taxes and things become so much that people can't afford to live there?
That MU1 district has a limited amount of residential in it. This is the Crawford Street. Okay, so the Airport Road, the industrial businesses on Airport Road, the industrial businesses on Hamilton, where the geodesic dome auto repair is. Okay, that's what we're talking about up there. I think there is a little bit of scattered residential in there, but it's not like this or this.
No, correct.
So what would be the effect of putting a multifamily overlay district on high-value, built-out industrial property? This Crawford Street there, it's got pretty decent highway access. There are businesses there because it's a pretty good place for industry. Would that be appealing? Would that be more appealing for a residential developer? Would the industrial businesses there want to sell out to the residential developers? Let's keep in mind this isn't just a question about the value of the property itself. An industrial business is carrying out operations that are making a bunch of profit. But low-value industrial, and then this question is also going to change depending on the community because of what residential property values are. So a town closer in towards Boston that rezones on top of some industry would have a higher chance of that industry being replaced by residential than a town that's further out where property values are lower. I can't stand here and confidently say, no, it wouldn't be worth it to any of them to sell their land to residential developers on Crawford Street.
You don't want to trade jobs for housing?
No.
No.
I mean, I'm pretty intimately familiar with that area. There's some parcels that might, but there's, most of the developed parcels are not going to, they're factories or commercial, highly valuable commercial property. I mean, I think if we need to get there using that, there's a possibility we could work something that might make sense.
Some of Nashua Street's industrial properties it's like construction yard. It's not particularly high value, and it's not your 200 industrial workers earning a living there. So those would be more likely to be overdone. All right. So
He says like your area where timber grows is because it's not so close up. It's just a section of space. So it's not actually.
So work with the MU1, MU2, plus the industrial areas, where it's a mile and a half a mile. And then this kicker added on.
what's that? The last part?
In other words, you take what's in MU1 and MU2.
They're both MU1s, but yeah.
Both MU1.
MU1, I'm sorry. Okay, and put the industrial area in there. And then look at the non-continuous, which would be Mahogany Run, to see if that leads to a
We've got options. We can get back to you with a report.
All right.
Thank you all for coming.
All right, so let me just make this official, right? So
Yes.
the motion, the recommendation of legal affairs is going
just
to be
announcing
further
it.
time, keep this public hearing open,
Yes.
and we're going to ask that we can explore using this as sort of our core. We're going to use some of Councilor Bedanza's recommendations and to see how feasible it is, because we have a contiguous issue, right, that we have to meet, and we don't off the top of our head know what that is, but we're going to, you and I perhaps can continue this discussion when we know that, and we'll have the list of the potential other sites that we'd like to examine. How's that?
Yes, that sounds good.
All right. Let me go to my other two members, Councilor Tossi. Can we close the train station?
Yes.
Okay. You agree?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, you're in agreement as well? Yes. Okay. So it will be the recommendation, then, unanimous recommendation, that we give this 45-24 further time, keep the public hearing open, and in the meantime, we will work, or I will, be the liaison, we'll see if we can't have something else to chew on for our June 10th meeting.
So should I be with my contact person now and going back and forth with?
I think that's a good idea.
I would please do.
We've been dealing with Elizabeth, and she's been setting everything up.
All right.
Oh, yeah,
Keep her in the loop as well.
Okay.
You know, that's fine.
What about the housing committee? And what was your name?
At some point, when we do get this to a place where we're think we're going to pass it, we're going to ask for recommendations from planning, housing. So, we're going to get feedback before it goes to a vote. But I knew this would be challenging. It's a very dynamic issue. It's emotional for people.
Do you think at the June 10th meeting, you should invite other boards that may be objective? Not objective, I mean, that would object to this and have more questions, then we go back and do more. I want everybody that's pertinent to see it all at the same time and ask the questions and make a decision.
It's everybody in the town that's hurt.
I know,
I was hoping that we had it refined to a plan that then we could invite the department heads down and say what kind of impact, because otherwise we're going to be asking them about impacts all over the place because you don't have a defined overlay district, right? I mean, in essence, the majority of the options we were given are in that core area, right? Because we have no choice. It has to be at least 40% and then a half-mile radius. So whatever we decide, if we go to Hamilton Street, if we go to MU1 on Nashua, we're still in that same area. So, you know, the water availability, sewer availability, that will all be that same basic envelope. So.
Sounds good.
All right. Okay. So I'm going to, unless there's anything else, any other questions? Sure.
Have they thought maybe take a little piece of the pie?
I'm sorry.
Take a little piece of the pie and maybe give it to the university or college where most people in Leominster would benefit. It's not today.
Well, we'll take that under advisement. All right, thank you. All right, I'm going to make a motion to, do I have a motion to adjourn? Do I have a second? Second? Oh, all right. All those in favor? Hey, Richard, everybody, there's only three of us. So you're just going to write down what time we leave?
They don't have to stop.
No, yeah, they don't have to stop. They're just.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
You remember me?
Yes, I do.
The Leominster City Council meeting is funded in part by DeCarolis Insurance Agency at www.decarolisinsuranceagency.com and by Avidia Bank at www.avidiabank.com.